I call it the ideal competitive mindset, which is kind of the North Star for this feeling of what it's like to be at your best. And so I would use these words and statements to cultivate this feeling inside of me of what my best looked like. There's a personal responsibility we all have to own our own mindset. It's harder to do when you're swimming upstream, and it's easy to fall into the trap of the fear of not performing, the fear of not being enough. It was just this feeling of like performing under pressure when you have 70,000 fans screaming at you, just like ice in my veins, something I never could have done early in my career. Practice obviously matters a lot, but it was also this deep trust and this deep flow experience that I was accessing. As a kicker, I wasn't allowed to wait until the fourth quarter to be confident. I had to be confident before the game even started because I might only get a couple opportunities.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly Fireside Chat series. And I'm here with Stephen Hauschka. He was the former NFL kicker for the Seattle Seahawks and Buffalo Bills. We were just talking about the Bills. They're going to have to get through Mahomes to get to the Super Bowl, but I'm rooting for Josh Allen along with a bunch of Bills fans in our group. But I'll tee up Steven's bio. He's a performance coach who helps athletes, teams, and organizations maximize their potential. A former NFL kicker, Steven developed a range of psychological skills under pressure and honed his understanding of teamwork and leadership during his 13-year NFL career. Played a pivotal role in the Seattle Seahawks' success, including kicking multiple field goals in their victory in Super Bowl XLVIII, where they defeated the Broncos 43-8. And he personally, I love this, outscored Payton Manning 11-8 in that game. That was a fun stat to see. He holds several NFL records, such as the most consecutive 50-yard field goals while playing for the Buffalo Bills. Stephen initially focused on academics and graduated cum laude with a degree in neuroscience from Middlebury College. He began playing football at the age of 19 and within 4 years earned a spot in the NFL. And so I often say sales is a performance sport, and a lot of the principles that top athletes deploy to be successful is what I deployed in my own sales career and what we teach here at Untap Your Sales Potential. So we're super excited to dive in today on what it takes to become an elite performer and how to perform under pressure and the mindset needed to reach and to maintain the highest levels of success. So welcome, Stephen. Great to have you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ian. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. And I just want to start at the beginning. So you're a super competitive guy. You told me you played lacrosse before going into the NFL. You had soccer before, and you obviously excelled at academics. I'm just kind of curious, what drives you personally to be the best you can be in whatever you're doing?
Yeah, so growing up, I was always kind of driven to see what I was capable of. Just, it was a gut instinct of, I want to see what the best I can do is. I was never really concerned about what other people were doing. I was just, as a kid, I was obsessed with kicking soccer balls and loved that sport. I think in a lot of competitors, a lot of elite performers, there's some attention, there's some feelings, that you get from performing at a young age, and you're like, wow, this feels good. Like, I'll do more of that. And I was obsessed with soccer, obsessed with playing sports. I was, did band, I did sports. I just, wanted to be the best at all of it that I could. And then when I got to college, well, first off, I was never recruited for anything. Even in high school, I had to walk on the lacrosse team. So I would always have this kind of growth mindset. I didn't believe talent was something that you either had or you didn't.
Mhm.
Um, Throughout my adolescence, I like went through growth spurts. I was still growing in college, and I realized that you could get better at things. Especially in high school. It sounds simple, but since I was never recruited, I really had to earn everything, and this work ethic led me to discover all the things that could help me. And much like um, one of humans' most powerful things is our ability to use tools. And I felt like that was one of my superpowers was to try things out, see what worked, learn it, incorporate it, implement it into my system. And so, in high school, college, and then, I played professionally, I was just incorporating all these different tools and really implementing them into my system. And I had no problem failing either. So uh, I went for things and I found myself, um, I think this alludes, maybe this is your next question about, kind of my journey into football. But basically, I failed as a soccer player. I was too slow,
Hmm.
and didn't make the varsity team. So I played JV soccer, and the writing was kind of on the wall. I was devastated. I mean, this is a sport I'd played since I was three. And um, in one sense, it felt like I was giving up, because I was like giving up on my dreams. But on another sense, I thought I could be really good at kicking footballs just because I was good at kicking soccer balls.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go for this. And yeah, I put on pads for the first time at 19, walked onto the football team, and that began a wild ride for me.
So just before we get into that ride, like, can you give an example of how you found a tool, implemented it, tried it in those early years? Like, what does that look like? If you think of a tool or something you did just to get better, it could be in football,
Yeah,
or it doesn't really matter.
you know, early on, um, early on, it was kind of my parents picking things, but I would go to soccer camps and I would learn a lot there. It was kind of during my professional career that I was like, what really helped me take off was um, I started Pilates when I was like my wife introduced it to me. But one off season was a great time for me to try out some new tools. So one year I started doing Pilates. I dealt with injuries early in my football career and worked with a great instructor, learned it. It was a totally different way to move my body. It's a totally different challenge. Um, learning stuff is hard. It takes energy. You gotta like pay attention to new ways, new thoughts and cues from the movement. And I kept learning it and I got good enough. And then I got my own reformer. I did that in the off season and then I did it during the season and just kind of like slowly implemented it into my routine. And, that was one example. Another, and then so like a lot of them were physical tools,
Mhm.
as a, especially for sales athletes, for, professional athletes, people in business, there's three things you can train. You can train your mind, your body, and your craft. And really everything breaks down into those three areas. So I was always thinking about myself, like if I could take myself out of my first person and just like almost imagine like here there's a camera looking at Steve, you know, I almost thought about myself as like, it would be like a GM looking at you or your boss or, another player, another kicker looking at me and be like, okay, what's he good at? How is he doing in each of these three areas? How is he doing physically? What are his strengths? Okay, what are his weaknesses? I tried to take myself out of it and look at it objectively. And I was always trying to implement like one new tool or try one new tool out and implement it physically, mentally, and technically.
So one at
And
a
if I,
time for each three, like concurrently.
yeah, throughout the year, you have to dive deep in these things if you want to master something.
Hmm.
It's not just you're not picking it up in a few days. Um, so the yeah, implementing that is huge, and yeah, I can't say enough about like finding different ways in those different areas. Like what are some mental tools? What are some physical tools? What are some technical tools? You have to be training all of them, and you have to know how you're doing in each one of those areas. Like, on a scale of 10, how good am I physically? Because if you're not good physically, as an athlete, that's going to translate over to your mental game, and it's going to
I would
translate to your
argue,
technical game.
I would argue if you're not good physically as a human.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
that's
think it's
kind of
just
the,
for athletes. You're not going to feel good about yourself. Your confidence is going to be impaired. You won't have as much energy. I mean, that's what we teach. We have a lot of health coaching in what we do. And
yeah, it's everything. It's
Mhm.
everything. I mean, there's not enough of it too. The business world is very stale. There's not a lot of movement. You're supposed to sit all day. You got to fire yourself up with high quality movement, and not just like old school. There's a lot of good ways to move your body, and like the better that you move your body, the more it helps your mind.
Anything you recommend for us that are sitting at a desk on Zooms for the majority of the day
Yeah,
for a quick movement
yeah, of course.
for the
I
group?
struggle with that. You have to understand, as an athlete who's moving his body all day long, and then with the work I'm doing, I spend a lot more time on my computer.
Mhm.
Um, so a couple easy ones, obviously the standing desk, the walking pad, treadmill type thing. Um, those are easy. I mean, if you can take phone calls and take them on a walk, that helps a lot. I
Yeah.
love doing morning workouts so that I'm not antsy all day. You can get that morning workout, and then it's almost like a bonus if you can do something fun later in the day with your kids, or go for a run or a walk or something. So that's kind of, but I have like all these systems that I track it. Like, I understand that I'm not going to be able to get everything in every day, but I have kind of a weekly tracking system, um, to so that so that I'm aware of everything I'm eating all week, how I'm moving all week, how I'm thinking all week, how I'm sleeping all week. And I track all these things, because they're all connected. They're all connected.
I love it. I love it. Again, it sounds very similar. You look at the Whoop or just things to be able to monitor what you measure, you can improve, right? And
1,000%.
having trainers, having physical trainers, what you're putting in your body, hydration, all this makes you feel good. And when you feel good, you work better, period. So I
And
love
and and nutrition, I can't express enough. If you guys haven't been on a nutrition journey, um, that is highly worth going down. It's almost like a geological time scale nutrition. A lot of people don't do it. Our society just doesn't talk about, or really recommend like diet changes. People have a hard time. It kind of gets confusing. I think it's all set up that way. But if you can find like a really clean, healthy diet and stick with it, you'll notice like significant changes in your mental clarity and in your sleep and your movement.
Mhm.
Yeah, no seed oils. That's all the rage right now. I mean, there's there's like, as an athlete, I went down a nutrition journey at one point. And when you directly feel like the difference,
Mhm.
you can't ignore it. So some of this stuff that's why I said the tools, you have to experience them. Somebody could talk to you all day long about how important nutrition is, but you have to go on a nutrition journey to do that. You have to go on a physical journey to do that.
You
You have
feel
to go on a mental journey to try to see what it feels like to have some new mental skills.
what happens is that becomes your new baseline. It's your new norm. So when you're not doing those things, you feel out of sorts because
Yeah.
you know what the standard it's been raised for
And
you.
my opinion too is, when you find something that works like really well, and there's this side of me that I found a few things. I was like, oh man, that works. Like, I can go deep on that one and make that a competitive advantage. When you find that, it's and then like, there's no point in doing something for a month and then dropping it if you know it's part of your system. You might not be able to do everything every day, but you gotta do stuff regularly to keep it as part of your system.
Your identity at some point. Well, let's get into the
Yeah.
elite performance. I know you're going to talk about tools and systems a little bit, but tell me kind of like your journey. You started at 19 years old. I want to play football. Tell me kind of what happened from there until you
Yeah, sure.
NFL and how you did that at 19. That's what intrigued me most about you is like you started playing football at 19. There's a lot more than just
Yep.
kicking to get to the NFL. So how'd you do it?
Yeah. So, I was blessed with some talent. Obviously, we all have natural talents. There was some luck in there. Um, I was determined as they get. I was, I would do anything. I would put all the practice in. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your audience would do that same thing. But what I kept running up against was, we all run into challenges when playing soccer and lacrosse. We're very team-oriented sports. When I ran on the field for the first few times as a kicker, I realized there were hundreds of people watching me, and that my play determined the outcome of the game pretty significantly.
Hmm.
And I only got a couple opportunities at it. And if I missed one, I would think about it on repeat over and over and over and over again. And so it started to build up some anxiety. It started to build up some fear. Um, and like one of the strategies I tried early on was like, oh, I'm just going to practice more, just going to practice more. And there is this part of us that is driven to perform by like, there's this part of us that doesn't think we're good enough. And so it drives us to practice, drives us to try all this stuff, to work harder. And I realized like, okay, I've got all this talent. Um, I was fortunate to work with a kicking coach they brought in who taught me everything. And he introduced me to this emotional freedom technique. And it's this tapping thing where you tap these like acupuncture points on your
This is
body.
before the NFL, right? This is before you got there.
This was before the NFL, yeah. And I refined this process. I used this process over the course of 15 years. But what I came to find was that if I identified the fears that I was having,
Mhm.
like even though they could be little fears, like even though I'm concerned about the win today, because I really want to have a good game. Um, and I'd be tapping throughout this, like these are acupuncture points um, throughout the body. And this whole thing took about 15 minutes. So even though I'm concerned about the win today, because I want to have a good game, I deeply and completely accept myself, and I love and forgive myself. And then there was like this like release of energy. So even though I'm concerned because I missed a kick in last week's game and I really want to have a good game today, I deeply and completely accept myself, and I love and forgive myself. Like release. Okay. These concerns that I'm having, these concerns I'm having about the game today, I'm ready to let them go. All remaining concerns be gone. I've had them long enough. I'm ready to let them go. Okay, so fears, concerns, kind of gone. All right, so now what do I want to cultivate heading into the game?
Can I pause before the cultivation?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't mean to
sure.
interrupt you, but tell me, because we're going to get to the positive, but tell me what that's doing physically, the tapping combined with the affirming. What is that
Sure.
from you studied neuroscience? What's happening?
Yeah, so our brains evolved to be for survival, right? Not thrival, really. So um we have this almond-shaped cluster of neurons in our brain called the amygdala, and it's basically a threat detection system. And when it detects a threat, it will fire um, to your autonomic nervous system like instantaneously before your logical brain has a chance to say like, oh, wait a second, that's not a threat. So when your brain, sees something that it's sees a threat, the amygdala fires this, and your heart rate will come up. You'll start sweating. Um, your mental processes change,
Hmm.
and there's a whole cascade of hormones and systems that get activated. And so you get kind of hijacked, because as you can imagine, trying to do a fine motor skill like kicking in front of thousands of people, um, you want to be relaxed and comfortable out there.
Hmm.
And so I realized pretty quickly, like from my neuroscience days, okay, I'm being hijacked here. Like I got to find a way around this, or I'm never going to get where I want to go. So um, tapping, tapping, like one session of tapping can lower cortisol by 40%, just one session of it. It can rewire kind of your thoughts and your actions and your behaviors. It can instill calmness and relaxation. And, there's a ton of evidence to back it up. I used it for 15 years. I still use it today and I use it with clients and stuff, but I used it to basically rewire, pivot from fear to belief and rewire um, the way that rewire like it was a way to change states quickly, and it was a way to cultivate the mindset that I wanted to be in for the game before I even got to it. um, and so by saying hi to the fears, recognizing them and releasing them, I kind of use that energy almost like in martial arts to shift to
Hmm.
the state of belief and confidence and feeling like I could do anything.
It
And
feels like an alchemy of energy. It feels like taking that
it is.
literally in the same cycle, turning it into belief or positive or transforming that energy.
And it's powerful because a lot of us, when you're not aware of your fears, they kind of hold power over you, and they make you act in ways that you definitely don't necessarily want to. It's not like your highest self. And so by just even acknowledging it, you don't have to go deep into them, but just by acknowledging it and releasing it a little bit, you can step into, um, you know, ultimately I learned it's called I call it the ideal competitive mindset, which is kind of the North Star for this feeling of what it's like to be at your best. Uh, and so I would use these words and statements to cultivate this feeling inside of me of what my best looked like. So I'll show you, and this is different for everybody. This is different. There's a little bit of work, just like a pretty quick, but you can define and journal this pretty quickly and figure out, okay, what is it? What does that really feel like? But for me on the field kicking, I'll finish it up. It's like I'm going to be more confident out there than I've ever been.
Hmm.
Every ball is going high through the middle of the uprights. I'm going to be more comfortable out there. I'm going to be relaxed and smooth. I'm going to be more comfortable out on that field today than I've ever been. And finally, I'm going to be more focused out there than I've ever been. I know the only thing that matters out there is me, not the insert anything out of my control, not the snap, the hold, the ball, the field, the win, the other team. None of that stuff matters. The only thing that matters out there is me. And then I would kind of head into those are kind of the mindset pieces that I wanted. And then I would head in, you can see that I'm calming down too. And
Mhm.
then I would head into this like embracing of the opportunity, like um, more acupuncture points. Like, I can't wait to get out on that field today because I love myself, I believe in myself, and I trust myself. I'm going to go for it. I can't wait to get out there. I know I've got what it takes underneath my heart. I know I've got what it takes. I am the best. I'm going to be just fine out there. I'm going to be just fine out there. Um, and there's a lot more behind it. This takes like 15 minutes. And
What's
I would
in,
do this
what's
the
interesting is
night before.
as you're talking and I'm doing it, it's like different than just saying it because it's like a rhythm that's almost beating. I just was listening as you were saying, and it's because I do affirmations regularly,
Sure.
but like the combination of hitting
That's
those
what it
points.
is.
Like it's
But
intensifying.
what is an affirmation? It's words, right? But what's the point of an affirmation? It's to feel a certain way.
Mhm.
And so this is a way of driving, change in your body to feel a certain way, like quickly. And so, if you're and in combination with, so I would actually do this process the night before the game, the morning of, and then I would visualize, in that state in that my ideal state, I would visualize, okay, because like my ideal state, let's be honest, it takes energy to get into your ideal state, and it's not always comfortable.
Mhm.
But my ideal state to play and kick in front of 70,000 people when the whole city was watching, when, you know, the playoffs were on the line, my ideal state, like it was somewhere between like a warrior's state and somebody going to battle and, being super relaxed, like a relaxed golfer or something. It was something in between those. It wasn't, and when I'd had to like drop into that state, and it takes energy, but I think, every one of us probably has like an ideal state that we know we're at our best. And if we were to cultivate that more often before before important events, or, depending on the situation, we'd be better served from it.
It's interesting when you're talking how everything that you've done in your life leads you to what is ultimately your superpower. And your background in neuroscience and how you leverage some of the brain knowledge to
Yeah.
wake up. Because where I think you were going is like grinding could only take me so far. I tried to
Yeah.
work harder and it didn't work. And until I incorporated some of these state tools or mental toughness tools into my routine, that's when things really took off. And that's unique in terms of your background because it's not you had the neuroscience background. You believed in the brain and in the different, parts of the brain that you could activate by doing
Yeah.
some work. And I just want to witness that as your
Thank you. Well,
superpower.
for whatever reason, I had no problem doing like weird, unconventional stuff. Like 20 years ago, this was a lot weirder than it is today. Um, I had no problem with that. I figured my logic was if I do everything the same as everybody else, I'm probably going to be average.
Hmm.
So you have to do things differently. And you have to, like, why ignore the things that were so obvious to me? Like, I had no problem admitting to myself, like, that's like, I love myself for that. That's a totally normal thing to have fears of kicking in front of 70,000 people.
Mhm.
So why not love myself? It's normal. I have a normal brain. So might as well acknowledge it and release it and like move through it.
Beautiful. So what happened once you started introducing some of the visualization and tapping tools and kind of tell me about the early years getting into the NFL and some of the early years in the NFL. I know you moved around a little bit in the beginning, the first few years. Kind of what was that journey like? Because you did encounter some hardship early on
Yeah.
going in.
Yeah. The beginning of my career was tough. Bounced around a little bit, had a few difficult coaches that really, um, challenged and I think probably enhanced my fear state. Um, the culture that you live and work in matters a lot. There's a personal responsibility we all have to own our own mindset. It's harder to do when you're swimming upstream, and it's easy to fall into the trap of uh, of the fear of not performing, the fear of not being enough. It's easy to fall into that in certain cultures. And early in my career, I didn't really think that I could do it my way. I thought I had to like learn and get. I don't. The moment, put it this way, like early on, it's a little foggy, but I was like working, I didn't think my technique was good enough. So I was like working on my technique, which turned out to be a mistake. Anybody who golfs knows that when you mess around with technique, it's usually makes it harder. So I was messing around with my technique. I thought it had to look a certain way on tape so that I could be a professional athlete. And it wasn't until I ran into some injuries, kind of had my back against the wall, was almost out of the league that I realized, you know what? I don't care what it looks like. I'm just going to go get the ball through the uprights and do it my way. And it was such a powerful moment for me. And I really built the success in my career off of that. It was like this deep trust in myself that like, I'll find a fucking way to get this done. I know how to do this. I'm really talented. I don't care what other people think about what it looks like. I'm just going to go for it. And that was what, I get chills thinking about it right now. That was one of the most powerful things. And, the tapping enhanced that and got me in this state of deep trust of myself. If you trust yourself in like the most intense situations, and you can cultivate that, and
Mm.
like the feeling, we had a game in Atlanta when I was playing for the Buffalo Bills uh, and there was a 55-yard kick. I jogged out there for, the whole Atlanta stadium is screaming, and this is to tie the game. It's like 3 minutes left in the game. The whole stadium screaming, and like I go out there and nail it. And then 3 minutes later, or no, like 2 minutes later, I'm out there again to go up three and from 56 yards, and I nail that one. And it was just this feeling of like performing under pressure when you have 70,000 fans screaming at you, just like ice in my veins, something I never could have done early in my career. But practice obviously matters a lot, but it was also this deep trust and this deep kind of flow experience that I was accessing.
I think you're speaking to something which, frankly, is not taught or available for most people, which is how do you get from a place where you care what people think, where you're insecure and you're blocked.
You're blocked.
You're blocked because when you're truly open, that's when you can feel spirit. That's when you
Yeah.
have something bigger than yourself guiding you, right?
Yeah.
And getting to that place requires clearing out the gunk, if you will. And you reach this point in your life where you just had enough and you're carrying too much weight and it's too heavy. And eventually, you realize it's a lot lighter when you just don't give a fuck, sorry to say.
Yeah.
Um,
It's true.
and it applies to business and sales too. It really does. When you are in service, you're not thinking about yourself. When you're in flow, you're not thinking about yourself. You're
Yeah.
coming from a whole different place, and that's what you need to do to get your own insecurities or fears or anxieties out the way, where flow state doesn't exist. I'd love you to kind of dive in on what did you have a moment where you're just like, no more? Or did something happen that just woke you up and where you stopped caring? Because that's the
Yeah.
pivotal
It
shift that
was literally,
we're
I
talking
was
about.
going to be out. I was going to be done. I was going to be done from injuries, from injuries and just not performing. And, it was when I was with the Broncos, I'd had a couple hip surgeries, and I realized like I just wasn't kicking the ball well coming off those hip surgeries. And I realized, you know what? Because I was trying to do some technique that had worked at one point, but I didn't really fully own it.
Mhm.
And then finally one day I was like, screw this. I'm just going to kick how I know how to kick. And I don't care what it looks like. And I started just pounding the ball. And, I think that points to something that we each have like a natural intelligence in us that knows how to get it done. and it can't always be explained. And I'm sure there's all this intuition, there's all this body language, there's all this human connection that's occurring when sales, um, in sales conversations. I'm willing to bet that, some of the best salespeople are like super organic and natural, and they just trust themselves deeply to get it done in their way.
Absolutely. The best salespeople don't look like what you think the best salespeople look like
Yeah.
when you think of a salesperson.
And I think so there's a cool concept of flow. Obviously, it's this state when you're fully immersed in an activity, you're just like fully engaged. There's oneness with the task, time and like the sense of self just disappear. And there's like this effortless quality of what you're doing.
Hmm.
And we all experience it. It's an interesting thing to measure because when you're in it, you can't, you're not there to know it. You only know that you were in it after the fact.
Hmm.
And flow, it's such a powerful performance tool. And there's an art to getting in flow more often. Can lead to better focus, better decision making, um, you know, higher performance, and it occurs. There's this one of the requirements. If something's too easy, if it's essentially boring, um, there's not a lot of engagement. If the challenge is really extremely difficult, it's going to produce anxiety and fear, and will keep people out of flow. If the challenge is just right, it kind of like a Goldilocks thing. If it's like 4% above your skill level, is what they say, there's a oneness with the task because it's just enough beyond your skill level that it takes everything you have and you kind of are immersed in it. You know you can do it and you're immersed in it. And your perception of your skills and your perception of your like belief in yourself and your perception of the challenge affects your ability to enter flow.
Mhm.
So like, if a robot was if we were robots, the perceptions wouldn't matter because the robot would just always perform to the ability it can. But since we're humans, if we think we suck at something and if we think the challenge is really hard, like we're not going to enter flow and we're not going to overcome that. If we think that, we can do it, if we believe in ourselves, and if we frame that challenge uh, as like an opportunity to show up at our best rather than a threat, we're going to be in a much better situation. And so a lot of the mental skills, the most important mental skills, they're around like fear, and like at the core of belief is love for yourself. Like I am capable, I can do this. So it's this balance between fear and love. And the mental game is playing with the perception of your own skills and using self-talk to like amp up your skills and how you frame the challenge in front of you, whether you view it as a threat or whether you view it as an opportunity to be at your best.
I have a mental toughness coach that I work with called Chris Doris, and I love his stuff. He actually coached golfers, PGA golfers, and he says stay above the O line, right? And it's the problem is the gift. What's the opportunity? What's the blessing in this? It's
Mm.
how you frame it. Very similar. The observation line, the O line being observation, like observe your thoughts and see how you're thinking about this. Is it a challenge you're going to rise to, or is it, or are you going to defeat yourself before you start by saying, I can't do this and it's above and beyond me?
So you said rise, and I think it's a um, natural transition into rise. It's so I've been working on. First off, it took me a while to unpack all of what was happening because I was like, you've never seen focus as deep as the place I was when I was playing football. You know, I could get into a state where nothing else existed. And focus is like one of the most powerful skills there is. And I recommend, that's basically what meditation teaches. There's a lot of different techniques for focus. Um, but being able to keep your mind on one thing, especially under pressure, is like extremely valuable. And I'm sure, you know, to keep yourself present in a sales conversation, is got to be one of the most powerful things there is. So the as I was kind of processing all this stuff, I was like, how can I do this in real time without having to tap, because that takes 15 minutes. And I've I've been working with it now for a year or so, and I've found something that I really like. I call it rise. And you can think of it as rise, like rise up you know, out of the fear, rise up to meet my challenges. And you start with the R, you recognize the fear. So, if there's a challenge, and this is actually something not only for a challenge, like, okay, public speaking, or, oh, I've got an important presentation, or I've got to do something with pressure attached to it.
Mhm.
It could be in the personal growth space. It could be a procrastination. It could be an addiction. Um, Behind every kind of compensated behavior, I think there's usually a fear attached to it. And so I've been playing with this in a few different areas of my life, but essentially, when you recognize the fear, um, you just kind of say hi to it. So I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, I've got a good example. The other um, couple, I'm writing a speech, and like probably a book. It'll turn into a book too. And my computer froze, and I lost this document that I'd been working on, and I got super super stressed out, reactive. I was like totally in fear, and I was like, so fitting that I was in fear over this thing when I'm talking about love, right? And so I was like, okay, let me try my process on this. So I recognize, okay, what are the deeper fears behind this document that I spent hours working on that I lost? Still didn't get it. Still haven't recovered it. And I realized my fear was that I wasn't going to get my message out to the world.
Mm.
And and it was like, and the other fear was that there was stuff hidden in there that I was going to lose and never find again.
Mm.
And I realized, you know what? All this stuff is within me, and I can get this message out there right now by just working on it right now. And so I recognized the fear. I said, hey to it, like, I don't need this. I invited compassion. The I is invite compassion. So it's like, oh, it's totally normal to have this feeling. I love myself for this. Um, of course I'd be concerned about that. I strengthen my mindset. That's the S, strengthen the mindset. And that's kind of the ideal competitive mindset. Like, I know I can do this. I know I can get this speech out there. I know I can work on this. And like, um, I believe in myself to get this out there. And then the E is an embrace. And it's like you're hugging the opportunity. Um, and it like I build this enthusiasm in myself for showing up to working on the speech, and I was excited about it. And it's like, I can't wait to work on this thing. So I spent the next couple of days working on it, and it's almost done now, and I like feel amazing about it. And I'm literally just like working through a fear. That's kind of a personal growth example, but you can use it, like I showed you, for kicking, or an important sales conversation. um, it's an amazing way to pivot from a state of like this to like, let's hug this thing. Like, I got this thing. I can do this.
Mm. I've been toying with an idea recently too. And everything you're talking about kind of feeds what I'm thinking already. And it's going from a place of shame to grace,
Mm,
from
yeah.
from shame to grace, from I can't do it. I'm afraid. Shame. I'm ashamed I lost my work. How could I not have saved it? I'm not going to, to like, okay, forgive yourself. Let's go. And you seem to have kind of systemized that process
Yeah.
in a quick type of manner. I really like that. It's just recognizing. So recognize the fear, invite compassion, which is that grace piece, and then let's go. Strengthen mindset, embrace the challenge at hand. How long did
Yeah.
it take you just in real time to get from I lost 2 hours of work to I'm ready to create an even better speech?
3 minutes. And
Powerful. Powerful.
it's super powerful. But not only was the 3 minutes powerful, it was 3 minutes well spent because it turned into, the most rewarding results I've had
Mm.
in months. I think it's tied into procrastination. I mean, how many things do we know that we should be doing that we don't do for whatever
That's where I
reason?
was thinking. It's like when you're getting in this state where you're avoiding what you need to do. I mean, in sales, like you're pretty much left on your own and you have to be self-accountable to do stuff that is difficult, right? Whether it's point of view development or prospecting or writing emails to go to execs. Like for the most part, unless you're working on deals, right, you're going to have to be very self-disciplined to work on revenue generating activities. And most sellers don't, frankly. They avoid it. They'll do busy work. They'll check emails, internal stuff. But that's the biggest thing we focus on is how do you stay focused on revenue generating activities? And I think procrastination is very relevant. Just getting from a state of like, I know I need to do this, but I'm afraid to do it to let's go, let's embrace the challenge. It's very
And
out.
and just naming how powerful, that's what emotional intelligence is all about, is naming it. What is this that I'm feeling? And if you just take a minute, you're not going to know from your brain, but just take a minute to sit and just like, what am I feeling behind it? Like, what's the energy behind this thing? Uh, it starts to unravel,
Mm.
starts to unravel. Like I have kind of a workout addiction that I built over years of playing football because there was a fear of getting injured because I got injured early in my career. So I worked out like an animal and would overdo it. And it's like, okay, what's behind this? Oh, it's a fear of getting injured. Well, it's like I'm not even playing football anymore. Why I don't have to do that? It's subtle things that you can, you know, show up show up better in different areas of your life too, with your family. Um, there's a lot to it, but I would recommend, I love podcasts. You know, I love it because it's a great exposure to things. But we have to practice these skills. So, you know, my advice would be just to practice and like stick with a few key mental skills and like own them. Because if you're trying like 10 different things all the time, um, and you're constantly searching, you don't necessarily like implement it.
Well, you're saying a lot of things that just, I think the group is, I already know the group is just blown away because I am, and how applicable it is to our business. And there'll be a lot of people watching this on YouTube. Um, I think just to summarize, it's space. It's that spaciousness. You alluded to meditation earlier, but being able to be aware of how you're feeling. If you're just going and doing, you can't tap into that focus that you're talking about or take the time or the space to pause and even recognize what's going on, to give it the grace.
Yeah.
And then it leaks and it explodes and it's rage and it's addiction and it's panic attacks because it's not being dealt with. So the awareness to
Yep.
get in touch with your emotions is a competitive edge. It is a massive differentiator, that focus. My last question, and then I want to turn it to the group. So get your questions ready, everyone. This is a great opportunity. My last question is if you could recommend one simple thing for people to do. You said don't do 10 things. If there's one thing that could help them with their mental toughness or focus or any of the topics we've discussed, I'd love to hear, like for beginners, where to start, who don't meditate or who don't maybe have the awareness to get into flow state in the manner that you or I might be doing after years of practice.
I think I think you need that North Star. I think you need that North Star of what it looks and feels like to be at your best. And then I think you have to have like a dashboard and check in occasionally. Um, Check in and see, okay, how am I doing? And then you use the tools that are most valuable to you are the ones that help you get back into that ideal state.
Yeah.
And so that ideal state, like you guys can all journal about that. Um, I have some exercises to take people through to really get clear about it. But it's a feeling. It's a feeling of when you're at your best, when you're like fully connected with what's happening in the present moment. You're fully connected with who you're talking to. You're fully connected with all your best ideas and your insights. It's and then it's like, okay, well, how do I get there when I feel like crap? You know? Well, if you have some good tools, you'll be able to do it. And I really think like I'm just imagining these important sales conversations when it's so easy to just show up like tired. We're all human. We don't get sleep sometimes. We don't eat the right way. We're traveling. Some stuff happens in our personal lives, but you got to turn it on, and you need to. That was my professional football career. You think all stuff's not perfect in people's personal lives when they're going out and playing on the field. They're human too. And but they get into that, they're able to snap into it quickly. So you need something where you can change states quickly. Because some days you're just going to have it, and some days you're going to have to work to get into it. And you need a system that you can do it quickly.
Hmm. I love it. And I love just recognizing how you feel in that North Star. People think a North Star is like, here's what I want to do with my life. But the way you framed it, the North Star of your ideal state, it's like the North Star of being. What does being your best feel like? Knowing
Yeah.
flow state and connecting with that, and then putting yourself in it through the tools, whether it's breath work or meditations or affirmations or
Yeah.
tapping or cold plunge or whatever it is, like just to get back to that state. It's fantastic stuff. I'm excited about your
And
book.
and the ideal mindset too, it's you can reflect on a few experiences when you were at your best.
Mhm.
That's a great way to do it. Okay, when was I at my best? What were some of my best sales conversations? Where was I just in flow? You know, what was happening? What was I sensing? What was I feeling? Journal about that, and you'll start to cultivate this North Star. And then from there, like you said, there's so many different tools and affirmations and self-talk, especially combined with tapping, get you there. Affirmations, that's essentially what the tapping is. It's you're combining affirmations with tapping these, like you're literally tapping it into your bones. And it like changes your state so quickly. And then it's a process though, because um you have to then check in with your dashboard too. Like, how am I doing right now?
Mhm.
So there's kind of three things. There's the North Star, there's the tools to get there when you're not there, and then there's the awareness of, okay, checking in. Okay, it's time to check in. You got to check
The
in.
tracking you talked about, seeing how we did, how we're doing.
You got to check in and have like a dashboard. For me, when I was kicking, the dashboard was, okay, how's like my energy level on a scale of 1 to 10? Is it, if I'm a 10 and I'm all like, jacked up on uh Red Bull, that's not going to be very good. If I'm like falling asleep, if I'm a zero, if I'm falling asleep on the sideline, that's not good. So I kind of wanted to be like a five or a six, you know. Um, then and there's different qualities to that. You can break it down further, but that's the most important one when I was, basically my state, like how jacked up or tired or in the middle of like that. That was most important to me on the sidelines during games. And you can breathe. If you're a 10, you can breathe to bring it down.
Mhm.
If you're a zero or a one, you can go run around, move your body, shake it up a little bit, do some tapping, get yourself going. Tapping can really bring you up or down, but
Stephen, do you have a hard stop in 4 minutes? I just want to be mindful because the
no,
questions are
no.
pouring in. So I want to make sure we get to as many as we can because a lot of people have a lot of questions. So first one is you did a sequence of affirmations every time. Is it the same sequence or does it change? And is there a specific reason you're tapping different parts? Is that correlated to different energy centers or is that not relevant to it?
Yeah, so I learned this and then from my kicking coach, and then I took my own direction. So it's not like classical emotional freedom technique. Um, but essentially, yeah, the regions do matter. I mean, you kind of start here and end, you start here and you end here, but you start here on like this karate chop spot.
Mhm.
And that's kind of when you're just bringing up, acknowledging things. You know, a lot of the a lot of the concerns are in our mind, right? And we're just kind of releasing those. And giving yourself permission to release your BS is like really powerful. Be like, and the feeling of like when you recognize, hey, I don't need that fear. I don't need that. Like that is kind of, fear can be a liar. Um, we all kind of need this fear compass that is, we need to calibrate it because if we don't, um, we're not going to be, aligned with what we're capable of. Because fear hijacks us. It's a liar. And when you look at most fears, like occasionally, like I like to surf, and there were giant waves last year around Christmas, and I was thinking about going out, and I was like, no, I've got three kids and a wife, and like I'm not gonna. It's not worth the risk. I'm not gonna do it. So fear was spot on there, but probably 80, 90, 95% of the time it's not, and we should just throw it out. um, so just acknowledging that, giving yourself the ability to release that and like the permission to release that is huge. And then, confidence and focus and being comfortable, there's a lot of like focus in the eyes uh and then you saw me down here kind of get towards like I can't wait to get out there, and
Right.
then like believing in myself, like
Mm.
I love myself, I believe in myself, I trust myself. It's like this full, you're literally tapping into a deeper level of belief and trust in yourself that we can get to sometimes when the perfect opportunity in the universe like presents itself and we're able to, we do something that we didn't think we could do and we feel great. We're like, wow, like I believe in myself. That was amazing. What I'm talking about is like get there before you get out there. Like cultivate that before, find that feeling before. Why, as a kicker, I wasn't allowed to wait until the fourth quarter to be confident. I had to be confident before the game even started because I might only get a couple opportunities. So I had to cultivate that. And, when you're in that mindset, you know, usually your results, like it's not, you're not going to be perfect, but you're giving yourself a much better chance. And, you're going to resonate like with the opportunities the universe um, wants to see you have there. Like if you're in that state, good things are more likely to happen.
It's not going to hurt you, that's for sure. Getting yourself mentally into a state of believing and loving yourself is it's not
Yeah.
going to hurt you, right? Versus the fear just overwhelming you, and
Well,
then
you guys deal with rejection, like fear of rejection, right? That's got to be one of the top fears you guys deal with. I'm sure
work.
there's, I'm sure there's a million nuances to it, but
I think there's a lot of imposter syndrome. A lot of
yeah.
people meet with execs, and it's like, who am I to carry this conversation with this
Mm.
CFO? There's a lot of self-worth, fear, deep shame
Well, you
underneath
guys are battling. You guys,
underneath all the bravado. It's feeling like we're not enough.
yeah, that's a lot of battle, and you can like ignore it and act like it's not there, or you can say, you know what, I know this is there. I'm gonna like work through it, which is kind of what my journey was.
Do you have any like videos, or can you make one maybe of just you going through the whole thing of your app? I mean, I think that'd be super valuable just to
We
see.
could probably do it. We could come up with one for sales. You and I could come up with them.
Maybe we can go offline and just I just doing what you do. We can come up. I think people need to come up with their own, but just the whole sequence
Yeah,
where you're tapping and how long, and then
sure.
be a tool for the community, I think would be huge. Because I love just how you flowed in the different parts, and especially in the heart, man. When you were doing that, I felt it. I felt the love because it's true,
Yeah,
from shame to grace, from a place of like your head to your heart. And when you make that shift, like that's when the power, that's when the God, the universe, that's when all the magic happens. When you're in that place of heart, the world opens up. So you're speaking my language personally, and I would love to, but I haven't done tapping, so it's pretty cool to see what you're bringing because it's new, and I've dealt with
yeah.
the different tools, but not tapping. So I love it. Let's do a couple more questions, and then we'll get back to it. Brendan Moore asked, "What's the highest pressure you've been in with an outcome that wasn't favorable, like missing a big kick? And how did you deal with that to bounce back quickly?"
I obviously had a few misses. Um, few, they're still hard to think about and like look back at. They're traumatic. They really are. Um, I missed, but I was able to. The cool thing in all of it, I was able to like evolve through them. Um, like so against Arizona, I had a kick where I missed from like 29 yards. It's just a weird fluky situation that I was in disbelief. I was like in total shock and disbelief. Like, how could that even happen? Was playing for the Seahawks and ended up being a tie game. And it was just the other kicker had missed an equally fluky kick, and it was like, what is happening? That one really shook me though. Um, a couple years, and I was tough on myself for that one. Like I went to a dark place after that one, just because I didn't think it was possible. There was shame, like you said. It kind of shook my trust a little bit of myself. Um, I came back the following season. I finished strong that season. Then I came back the next season. I was um, with a different team though, with the Bills, and had a phenomenal season that year. And like kind of recovered from it, responded from it. So I kind of used the energy of it to like show up better.
Mhm.
And then an interesting thing happened the following year, or actually 2 years after that. I shot like I had a short, there was like a 30 something yard kick for the Bills, should have made it and missed it, affected the game. And I remember jogging off the field like after, well, there was actually a longer kick at the end of the game that I missed to win it, but um, I remember jogging off the field like having this compassion for myself. It was the first time that that had happened.
Hmm.
So like this compassion for kind of knowing what a difficult profession it is and knowing that it's going to happen occasionally. Um, and that it's hard, and that you're gonna have to like scoop yourself up off the ground sometimes. And um, but I remember jogging off the field being like, have like saying I love myself, but also like having this feeling of love towards, for myself, despite, you know, it just being a totally shitty situation and having to answer to reporters and like this whole, like I've journaled a lot on kind of the anatomy of a miss and kind of the resilience built into that. And it stems from compassion. Like, uh, you know, resilience is really how quickly you can get back to your ideal state. And you have to love and forgive yourself for like the mistakes that you have. Because, in the arenas that we're in when we're trying to be our best and they're difficult, bad stuff, mistakes are gonna happen, and we're gonna have to bounce, fail forward and bounce back from that as quickly as we can. And the self-compassion, I think, is at the core of that. Because early in my career, I just run, 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 mistake, literally like could play the kick over in my head without whether I wanted to or not for all night long, wouldn't sleep. At the end of my career, I could sleep, and wasn't easy, still wasn't easy. I still had to pick myself up, but there was a love for myself for like, oh, that sucked. And like, I know I'll bounce back, and like, but also just appreciating myself for showing up in these situations.
Sounds like a lot of growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other way is just too painful. You get to a point, right? It's not serving you anymore, and you realize that.
Yeah, it is.
The last question we have, and then we'll wrap, is from Arjun. He says, "How do you go about identifying which areas to work on?" You said you're working on your mind, your body, your skills. Do you have a
There's
process?
there's a few different ways to do it. You can I think they're all valuable. One is you think about yourself, okay, from your first person's perspective. Okay, how am I doing? What does it look like for me to be at my best physically? Um, what does it look, granted, physical performance meant a lot more as a pro athlete than it does as a sales athlete. But, you know, what does it, what's like, you have to have an understanding in each one of these areas. What does it look like to be at my best, like physically? What does it look like to be at my best mentally? What does it look like to be at my best technically? And so first person perspective is really important. Take yourself out of your shoes and imagine you're your boss or an associate, and be like, okay, look at yourself and be like, okay, what's that person objectively? How are they doing in those areas? And then I think another good one is, you can always phone a friend and get kind of a 360 evaluation. And you can also look at what the top performers in your space are doing. You know, Obviously you can see physical skills, you know, physical attributes a lot better than you can see mental or technical, but you can pick up on that stuff too. You can see how people respond to stuff. You can see the skills, the nuances of the communications techniques, the picking up on body language, energy, you know, all that stuff. If you pay attention to it, you can get it. Um, so I don't know. I think ultimately though, you gotta like you're yourself. So the most important thing is how you frame it. You're not trying to find weaknesses. You're trying to see what you can improve at.
Makes sense, man. Well, I'm thrilled to have you. I'm sure this won't be the first time we get in touch and connect, and I'm excited to see more of the tapping and how to use it and incorporate it into our work. If people do want to follow you or connect with you or learn from you, what's the best way to?
Yeah, sure. I'm putting a link here I'm on LinkedIn, but this is like a Calendly. If anybody ever wants to chat, I have like a free um,
Careful
chat on there.
careful what you put out because your thing
Oh
will
gosh,
you'll get hit. I won't put that on YouTube, but for our
and then
live attendees who stuck around, there's your treat. 17 people left live. So I wouldn't
yeah.
do that with everyone else, but that's all. Because if I put it on YouTube, you'll be full for months easily.
Well, there's a link to a free discovery call there, and if anybody wants to, dive into some of this
Hmm.
deeper, there's a link for a paid one. But the um, yeah, I'm still in the process of building my website, and we've talked a lot about brand builders, which I'm excited to embark on that journey. But
Fantastic.
yeah, I've immersed myself in kind of I just love doing this stuff. I love helping people, and I'm excited to this has been a really fun conversation. I didn't realize how many parallels there were between um our worlds here. And yeah, this has been really fun. And I love all the questions and the comments here.
I missed one question. Do we have time for
Yeah,
one more?
sure. Yeah,
I
go
think
for
it's a
it.
good closing note. So this is from Justin. So, one of the things that sellers struggle with, and I'm sure athletes too, is focusing on the prize, right? I want to win the Super Bowl. I want to win the Super Bowl. I want to, you know,
Yeah.
get there. And for sellers, it's I want to make $1 million. I want to, close a mega deal, right? And so the question is, how do you strike a balance, or what's the mindset between on the dream and the outcome or the big goal versus being patient and really understanding and trusting the process? And have you ever dealt with that, like how to focus on the process, not the prize? Um,
Yeah, process is always huge. What are the things that the top performers are doing to make that kind of stuff happen? Being too focused on the prize is the risk there. You have to have an awareness of it, but the risk of being too focused, like it's all a balance, right? If you don't have if you don't know what the prize is and you only focus on the process, you know, I I think it's a balance. Are you living in a healthy balance with it's really the journey and the destination is what we're talking about. The issue with having a set destination and like only being focused on that, first off, like you're kind of missing out on the present moment. You're missing out on the enjoyment and all the growth and all the learning and all the things that really make us human along the way. Because then every action in your life is connected to, some transaction. Rather than trusting that, like, hey, if I just show up and do my best in this, you know, do my best version of me in this moment, that like that stuff will come. I think that's more of a trusting the mind, trusting the process. And yeah, the problem with focusing so much on the journey, or sorry, on the destination too. Like I won a Super Bowl, and right after we won, it was like one of the emptiest feelings of my life. And then you have to reset and like find something different, and you realize it's not about the destination anyway. Like so, there's a great um obviously I'm sure your audience is aware of Joe Dispenza, and instead of focusing on money, he recommends focusing on like freedom and abundance. And that's what I'm aligning towards as well. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, because aligning towards money is almost like pointing your direction towards money is almost, it's like a scarcity mindset that you need that. um versus like abundance, where it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on abundance and helping people solve the most important pressing problems that are valuable to society, and focusing on what freedom looks like for me. Well, you're going to focus on creating value for people.
you're you're touching on a lot of spirituality here, and you talk about a hangover after a Super Bowl. Every top seller I know that sold the biggest deal of their life, that was working their whole life towards that, experienced the same hangover
Yeah.
because they thought they would be different if they just reached the elite. And sometimes you have to reach the top to realize it's not what you want or need.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to say that when you haven't reached the top yet. You have to experience getting the money before you realize it's not the answer. You have to experience winning the Super Bowl before you realize that there's emptiness. I certainly, that's been my experience.
Yeah.
I'll just leave this with everyone is the happiness is the joy you will feel in the pursuit of your full potential. And the pursuit never stops. We've never arrived. And when you accept and embrace the fact that we're always trying to get better and we're always working on different areas, maybe we've reached elite in our career, but now our marriage or our family life is not where it needs to be, right? Then we pivot. Or maybe we're just freaking stressed all the time and our general peace level is not where it needs to be. And then we pivot to a more peaceful life. There's always something. You've never arrived. And you talk about not chasing money. You're talking about, I mean, I'm Christian. You can't serve two masters. You cannot serve two
Yeah.
masters. And if money is your God, then you're always going to always have a void. And
Yeah.
money will provide security and certainly can provide a nice lifestyle, but it can't replace God. It can't replace love. It can't replace abundance. And that comes from something much greater than money. And I think that's probably a good place to start, you guys. I love the conversation, Stephen.
Yeah. Me
I
too.
love
This is a blast.
yeah, I love the parallels with sales because it's all the same. You're an elite human, you're an elite seller, you're an elite athlete. It's all the same tools, frankly. So you could give a class in our mindset or habit section. So anyway, thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian.
This was a treat, and we'll be in touch. I'll set up a separate call, and I'm going to share that Calendly because I see there's a paid engagement. So if you guys want to
Yeah. Yeah.
work with Steve or learn some of these tools and spend 30 minutes with him, like go do yourself a favor and get a masterclass one-on-one because he will not be available. We're getting him in the beginning of his career transitioning to this. So get him while you can, brothers, because I can promise you, once this book comes out, once he goes all in with brand builders, it's going to look a lot different. So I'll put the Calendly below. And yeah, I appreciate everyone hopping in. Thanks so much, Steve. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.